Raking leaves and pine straw are one of our last gardening chores this time of year. And once we get this done, many of us have a tendency to want to burn these leaves and pine straw. And that's really not a good idea because of the fire hazard, not to mention some of the regulations that might be occurring in some of our counties and cities. The other thing that we have a tendency to do is bag them up and send them off to the landfill or with the garbage dump. But many states, 4 in particular, are coming up with harsh rules where in the next 4 years they won't be accepting any yard trash such as leaves, grass clippings, and branches and that kind of thing. And this is primarily because they're finding that 40 to 60% of their landfill is consumed by this kind of material. And as you know, it will recycle and decompose, but once it gets mixed in with plastic, other things that don't decompose and gets too thick, it has a tendency to last for quite a while. So we want to show you some ways that you can reuse this pine straw and some of these leaves to mulch and also to decompose and compost here in your garden. Some of the uses for pine needles would be to use them as a mulch in our garden and landscape. Pine needles make a great mulch because of their waxy coating around the needle, and they have a tendency to pack down real well but still allow moisture and air movement through the mulch. We'll be using our pine straw to mulch some of our newly planted trees and shrubs, but we'll also use it as a mulch around our fruit trees in our orchard and some of our other trees where we're trying to keep out the grass from competing with the trees. Another good use for the mulch will be to cover up some of our newly planted bulb beds to help aid in moisture retention and also some of the winter weed control. But mulching this time of year is real important because we can help stabilize those soil temperatures with that freezing and thawing that goes on during the winter months. So a mulch with pine straw of about 2 to 3 inches is a real good way to reuse these pine needles. Winter is not the best time to be making compost. However, with all of our yard trash that we're collecting this time of year, we still want to be considering making this compost pile because of the benefits that we'll get next spring from either a mulch or organic matter that we can add in the soil. Now we've already added some grass clippings here, as well as we've got a little bit of sawdust, and we'll want to turn those over before we start adding some of the yard trash that we've already collected. And over here we've got some of our bags of leaves, and the thing that we want to remind you about when collecting leaves is try to shred those up. And if you don't have a chipper shredder, the easiest way to do it is just use your lawnmower and try to break them up that way. Add those in the compost pile, and breaking them up actually helps in getting a faster decomposition because they have a tendency to mat down. We can also use the shredded leaves as a mulch, but again, they'll have a tendency to steal a little bit of nitrogen from the soil, so we may have to supplement some of our fertilizer. We also collected some of our pine straw, and we've used that as a mulch, but we can also shred that up and use in the compost as well. We just want to keep in mind that if it's been diseased, we don't want to mulch around our pine trees, and we need to make sure that our compost pile gets between 140 and 160 degrees so we'll kill out those diseases. But again, we need to shred that up so it will decompose a little bit faster. Now the key to our compost pile is some products down here that we want to show you. You can actually buy a compost maker which would contain some microorganisms and nitrogen, and those things are what's real important to get the organic matter to start breaking down. If you want to go completely organic, you can use things such as blood meal, which are anywhere from 12 to 15% nitrogen, or you can use alfalfa meal. And then if you want to go the inexpensive route, one of the best things is just to use some of good old soil that we have out of our garden and just sprinkle a little bit over each of the layers. But you still want to add some nitrogen back in even though you're going to use the soil. The soil will add organic microorganisms, but you want to get the nitrogen in there as well. Things such as dog food, even high in protein, would work, or you can use a commercial fertilizer like 3300 or 4500. So once we get all those layers in, we want to put in a plastic cover where we can keep the moisture from compacting the compost and actually help heat it up a little bit during the winter time. And as the months go on, we'll turn it occasionally, maybe pull some out to mulch around some of our shrubs that have weathered away, but most importantly, we'll use it next spring and summer because it will take a little bit longer. Well, that's all the time we've got for today's show. We'll hope you join us again next week here on Oklahoma Gardening.
We hope you enjoyed this video. It's part of our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. You can also find more recent videos on our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.